All right, welcome back to the deep dive.
It's good to be back.
So for this deep dive, we're going to be focusing on a pretty significant event, a really dark moment in Orange County history.
Yeah.
The 2011 Seal Beach shooting at Salon Meritage.
Yeah, this event really, I think it shocked everyone. It had a huge impact on the community.
Absolutely. And, we're talking about October 12th, 2011, a mass shooting that occurred at this hair salon in Seal Beach, California. 8 people tragically lost their lives. It's the deadliest mass killing in Orange County history.
Just awful.
One other person was injured, thankfully survived, but still. Um,
Yeah, just an absolutely horrifying event.
so at the heart of all this, we have the perpetrator, Scott Dekraai, and he had a direct connection to the salon. One of the victims was his ex-wife, Michelle Fournier.
Right.
A really messy custody dispute is what emerged as the main motive, the driving force behind this, it seems.
Yeah, and I think, custody battles, they can be so difficult and so emotionally charged. And this case just really sadly shows how those situations can spiral out of control and just the importance of having support systems in place, maybe early intervention to
Absolutely.
try and prevent things from escalating to such a horrific point.
Yeah, it's such a powerful reminder.
It is.
And, the legal proceedings, it was complicated, as you can imagine. Dekraai ultimately pled guilty in 2014. And then in 2017, he was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole.
Wow.
So today, what we're going to try to do is really get beyond just the basic facts of what happened. We really want to understand, the sequence of events of that day, remember the victims, understand a little bit about Dekraai, what led him to this point, and understand the aftermath, the lasting effects on the community.
Right.
So to kind of kick things off, let's just jump right into the day of the shooting itself.
Okay, sounds good.
Just trying to really set the stage for people.
Yeah.
So we are looking at Wednesday, October 12th, 2011. It's about 1:21 p.m. Pacific Daylight Time
Okay.
at Salon Meritage, which was located at 500 Pacific Coast Highway in Seal Beach. I mean, just a normal hair salon.
Yeah, a place that people go to relax, to feel good about themselves. It's just, the contrast is just so stark
Totally.
to what happened.
It's really hard to, even comprehend the brutality of what happened. The shooter, Dekraai, he had 3 handguns on him.
3.
A 9mm Springfield semi-automatic pistol, a .45 caliber Heckler & Koch, also a semi-automatic pistol, and then a really powerful .44 Magnum Smith & Wesson Model 29 revolver. He even reloaded at least once during the attack, and, the whole thing was over in about 2 minutes.
Oh my goodness, that is...
Just so much violence compressed into such a short amount of time.
Yeah, and the fact that he had multiple weapons that he reloaded, that suggests that there was, at least some level of planning, premeditation involved.
It's disturbing.
Absolutely.
So, inside the salon, there were about 20 people there. I mean, it must have been just absolute chaos, panic.
Right.
People are trying to, run, escape. Some hid in nearby businesses. Some managed to get out. It's hard to even imagine what that must have been like.
Yeah, the chaos, the terror, and also the incredible bravery of those who, reacted so quickly
Right.
to try and save themselves and others.
Absolutely.
All
And,
right.
sadly, 6 people were pronounced dead right there at the scene. And then 3 others, they were taken to the hospital. They had been shot. But tragically, 2 of those 3 later died from their injuries.
So 8 lives lost in total.
8 lives lost.
Just a devastating number.
Yeah, and there's this other incredibly sad aspect of this story. There's this man, David Kiewit. He wasn't even inside the salon. He was sitting in his parked car outside. He was visiting a nearby restaurant, and he was shot and killed. Just a completely random victim caught in the crossfire.
Just a completely innocent bystander. Just a horrific, senseless tragedy. It really just underscores the randomness, the indiscriminate nature of these acts of violence.
Yeah, just awful.
Absolutely.
So I think it's important to take a moment and actually remember those whose lives were lost. The victims, the 8 deceased victims, were Victoria Buzzo, David Kiewit, Randy Lee Fannin, who is the owner of the salon, Michelle Doshbach-Fast, Michelle Marie Fournier, Dekraai's ex-wife, Lucia Bernice Condas, Laura Webb, and Christy Lynn Wilson.
May they rest in peace.
Behind every name, there's a story, a family, a whole life.
Absolutely. And a ripple effect of grief and loss that just extends so far beyond that day.
Yeah.
Huh.
And, we also should remember the one person who did survive, Hattie Stretz. She was Laura Webb's mother. She was there getting her hair done by her daughter.
Oh, wow.
And she was critically injured. The bullet actually went through her arm and her upper chest, but she did survive.
remarkable that she survived such a serious injury. It speaks to her strength, her will to live.
Yeah, absolutely.
But it also reminds us, I think, of the long-term impact, the physical and emotional scars that these events leave on survivors.
Yeah, it's not just that day.
Uh,
It's everything that comes after.
Absolutely.
And, it's even more tragic when you consider the connections between these victims. Like Laura Webb, as I said, she was doing her mother's hair, Hattie Stretz.
Oh, wow.
And then you have Randy Fannin, the salon owner. There are reports that he actually pleaded with Dekraai, said something like, please don't do this. There's another way. Let's go outside and talk. Just heartbreaking.
It just breaks your heart to think about that.
Yeah.
And it speaks to, I think, our innate desire as humans to try and de-escalate, to find a peaceful solution, even in the face of such extreme aggression.
Yeah.
But tragically, in this case, that plea was ignored.
Yeah. And then you have Christy Lynn Wilson. She had testified in a custody hearing on behalf of Dekraai's ex-wife just the day before the shooting. So all these interconnected lives just makes it that much more impactful, the ripple effects of this event.
Absolutely. You can just imagine the shockwaves of grief and trauma that went through that community.
Right.
It's not just individual lives lost. It's a fabric of a community that's torn apart.
And amidst all of this, we should mention Sandy Fannin, who was Randy's wife and the co-owner of the salon. She was there, but she was unharmed. She managed to hide.
Thank goodness.
It's a relief, but it also, can't imagine what she witnessed.
No, the trauma of that, witnessing such a horrific event, it's unimaginable.
Totally. So let's shift gears a little bit and talk about Scott Evans Dekraai, the perpetrator. At the time, he was 41 years old, living in Huntington Beach, California.
Well,
He had divorced from Michelle Fournier back in 2007 after being married for about 4 years. And this divorce, unfortunately, seems to be where things really started to go downhill.
right, the breakdown of the marriage, the beginning of what seems to have been a very bitter custody dispute.
Yeah, it was a long, drawn-out legal battle over their 8-year-old son. And you can see in the court records how acrimonious things became. It was very hostile.
That kind of protracted legal battle, it can take such a toll on everyone involved.
Absolutely. And, there are some other things in Dekraai's past that might help us understand a little bit what happened.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, nothing can excuse his actions, but it's important to try and understand the context, the factors that might have contributed to this tragedy.
Right. So back in February 2007, he was involved in a pretty bad tugboat accident, and he sustained some serious leg injuries. And apparently after that, people noticed a change in his personality.
Oh, wow. So that physical trauma might have had some lasting psychological effects.
Yeah, and then that same year, he actually had a restraining order filed against him following an incident involving his stepfather. And this order initially barred him from owning any firearms, although by 2011, that had expired.
Right.
And then in September 2008, he's diagnosed with PTSD.
So we see these accumulating layers of trauma, physical injury, mental health challenges, and then, of course, the stress and conflict of the custody battle.
Right, it paints a picture, although, again, it's not an excuse.
No, of course not. But it does raise important questions about the systems we have in place. Are we doing enough to identify and support people who are struggling with these kinds of issues before they reach a breaking point?
Absolutely. And to add to all of this, the day before the shooting, there was a court hearing about the custody arrangement for his son, and the recommendation was a near-equal custody split. It's possible that this decision, even if it was a fair one, maybe triggered something in Dekraai.
Right. It's a reminder of how sensitive and emotionally charged these custody issues can be.
Yeah.
And how people can sometimes react in unpredictable and sadly violent ways when they feel like they're losing control.
Yeah, and after the shooting, Dekraai, he was caught pretty quickly, about half a mile from the salon. He was driving a white pickup truck, and he was actually wearing body armor.
That's chilling.
Yeah, it suggests some level of planning, that he was prepared for some kind of confrontation. Thankfully, his arrest was without incident, but it's still a disturbing detail.
Absolutely. It points to a level of premeditation that's really unsettling.
Yeah, and there are some things that he said after he was arrested that are pretty important. First, he admitted to shooting his ex-wife, Michelle Fournier, first. But that contradicts what witnesses inside the salon said. They said the owner, Randy Fannin, was the first victim. So it's a little unclear exactly what the order of events was.
Right, and that discrepancy could be, it could be a genuine memory lapse. It could be an attempt to manipulate the narrative in some way.
Yeah, and he also said he shot David Coet, the man in the parking lot, because he thought he was an off-duty or undercover cop. It was a case of mistaken identity.
Just a tragic misperception with devastating consequences.
Right.
It really highlights the chaos, the irrationality of that moment.
Yeah. So the legal proceedings, they were pretty complex, a lot of twists and turns. So initially, Dekraai is charged with 8 counts of murder, 1 count of attempted murder. And the Orange County District Attorney, they made it clear they were going to seek the death penalty.
So it was a capital case from the outset.
Yeah. And Dekraai, he initially pled not guilty at his arraignment in November 2011. But the trial, it was supposed to start in March of 2013, but it kept getting pushed back.
Yeah, these high-profile cases,
Yeah.
they often involve mountains of evidence, lots of legal maneuvering.
Right.
It's not unusual for them to drag on for years.
Yeah, and then, kind of a surprise, in May 2014, Dekraai changed his plea to guilty on all charges. And that meant at least the victims' families wouldn't have to go through a long and painful trial.
Right.
It was a bit of a relief, I'm sure, for them.
Yeah, a sense of closure, I'm sure, but, the sentencing phase was still to come.
Right, and that's where things got really complicated. In March 2015, Judge Thomas Goethals, he actually removed the Orange County District Attorney's Office from the case.
Wow.
Because he found that they had withheld evidence from the defense, which is a very serious offense.
Yeah, that's prosecutorial misconduct, and it's a huge deal. It undermines the entire process.
Yeah, it did delay things significantly. The California Attorney General's office, they had to take over the case.
And that kind of misconduct, it really erodes public trust in the justice system.
Absolutely.
Right.
And then, because of that misconduct, Judge Goethals ruled that Dekraai was no longer eligible for the death penalty.
Okay.
So in the end, September 22nd, 2017, he's sentenced to 8 life terms without parole, plus 7 years to life for the attempted murder charge. So essentially, he's going to spend the rest of his life behind bars, which is, I'm sure, some solace to the victims' families.
Absolutely. It's not the death penalty, but it's still a very severe sentence.
Yeah.
And it ensures that he's held accountable for his actions.
Yeah. So, despite all of this horror, the Seal Beach community, they really came together.
That's good to hear.
There was a fund set up to help the victims and their families, and it raised something like $400,000.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah, really shows the outpouring of support. And then, in November 2012, Salon Méritage, it actually reopened after being remodeled.
Really?
Yeah, they kept the same name. I think it was a really powerful symbol that the community wasn't going to let this tragedy define them.
Right, it's a statement of resilience, a refusal to be ruled by fear.
Yeah. And then, in 2015, a memorial was built in Eisenhower Park in Seal Beach to commemorate the victims.
A place for remembrance, reflection.
Yeah, and I think it's important to note that this event, it remains the deadliest mass murder in Orange County history. It surpassed the 1976 Fullerton Massacre in terms of the number of victims.
What a grim distinction.
It is, it really is. So I think we've covered a lot today. We've gone through the timeline of that horrific day, remembered the victims, we've delved into Dekrai's background, talked about the long legal battle and the aftermath, how the community responded.
Yeah, we've really tried to unpack this complex event to understand it from different angles.
Absolutely. And I think, this event, it obviously leaves a huge impact, not just on Seal Beach, but I think on everyone. It forces us to confront some really difficult things about violence, mental health, our legal system.
Right, and I think for the listeners, it's a chance to reflect on the different aspects of this tragedy, the personal struggles involved, the legal complexities, the community's response.
Right. What stands out to you?
What does it tell us about ourselves, about our society? It's a question that I think stays with you long after you hear this story.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for joining us on the deep dive today.
It's been my pleasure.
And for everyone listening, we really appreciate you being here.
Yeah, thank you for listening.
Until next time, take care.
Bye.